Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. It is October 26th, 2021, and here's your news for the day. First off, reporting from CNN, Chris Cillizza is talking about Joe Biden's approval rating and the fact that it is at its lowest. It is the lowest president's approval rating at this point in their presidency in the modern era, except for one. And that one is obviously Trump. Now, this is why this is important. Obviously, this isn't about a Joe Biden versus Trump type of thing, but just the fact that Joe Biden's approval rating is as low as, or seemingly second to Trump's only in being that low. But remember, Joe Biden was brought in as a unifier. Joe Biden was brought in as somebody who could kind of bring everybody together, and he was elected essentially to be the not Trump. And it turns out it's just more of the same. And it kind of becomes a question a little bit of whether or not this is our fault. Are we the ones who are creating this divisiveness and putting ourselves in a situation where it's team sport politics, and there is no recovery from this until we start finding a way to work together, at least understand each other. And ultimately, there's a lot of things that kind of stand in the way of that, whether that's media, whether that's just our anger cycle, whether that's Facebook specifically promoting things that make us angry over things that make us happy. Which is what's come out on the Facebook papers, that's actually a better business model for them, is to feed the outrage meter as opposed to, cats playing with yarn type of thing. So a lot of this could be on our shoulders as far as how's that going. But this is why this matters in a practical sense. Right now, we're heading toward a climate summit in Glasgow, apparently a wildly important climate summit, as we have not hit many of the marks that we had talked about way back in 2010 with some of the Paris Climate Accord. At that time, developed nations were supposed to be putting $100 billion per year into underdeveloped nations to help them kind of progress along this process. We haven't been hitting that. People have not been paying it, obviously. And we have been apparently on a trajectory to increase emissions by 16%, which is way above what we were supposed to be doing. At the time, we were hoping to drop our percentages and actually only warm somewhere like 1.5 degrees Celsius was the goal of the Paris Climate Accord. At the high level, it was supposed to be 2 degrees. Looks like now we're at a 2.7 degree trajectory, which is, as climate is concerned, considered disastrous. Now, I disagree with some of those elements just because I think that it doesn't take into account the adaptation procedures that humans would just naturally do over the course of a century. It deals only with mitigation. It deals only with stopping that trajectory and not adjusting or dealing with that trajectory. So different question. But the developing countries have been kind of pushed aside in this process and told like, hey, just sit here, we'll take care of it. And they're not accepting it anymore. They're saying we are not going to be doing this any longer unless we start getting this money. Specifically, Mohamed Adaw, director of the Power Shift Africa movement, which is a Nairobi-based think tank, this is coming from the Washington Post, said that the inability of rich countries to keep their promise is utterly shameful. He says, poor nations will not be conned, and the leaders of the developed world need to pull their finger out and get this money on the table if COP26, the climate summit, is going to be a success. Essentially saying, this is not us. The developing countries, we're going to do what we have to do to try and survive, to try and grow, to try and become sustainable on the world stage. It is up to you if you want these things changed. And this is how you know this is not something serious. Right now, the number one emitter of CO2 in the world, the biggest threat to that climate, is China. President Xi will not be showing up to this climate summit in Glasgow. So when you have the number one biggest problem not participating in the solution, you don't have a solution. And we can put as much pressure as we want on everybody. America has been lowering their emissions overall. The idea that somehow Americans should be feeling the brunt of this, whether that's financially or with the changes that need to be made, is ridiculous if you're not bringing India and China along with, who are your two biggest emitters. India might be attending, China is not. So we don't even have buy-in on a philosophical level, on an ideological level, let alone the practical side of it, which again, you are never going to get China and India to a degree to, because they are still in a fight for their lives. They are still in a fight, a competition for supremacy. We are not in that situation. We are not an underdeveloped nation that is literally struggling to survive. We have the capability of adapting and mitigating and doing all sorts of great things because we have earned our way there by using dirty energies all the way through the industrial era. Like, our history is where a lot of these people are today, and we're telling them that they can't follow our same path, which is extraordinarily arrogant, and I would argue a little bit hypocritical as well. And this is where the breakdown will always occur. We took the path that they're trying to walk and are now telling them that path is no longer okay, and you need to do it for the good of all. No, they're going to follow in our path. That's what they're going to do. And unless we come up with a better way to do it, which I would argue is the adaptation side of it. I mean, we put a playground in the desert with Las Vegas, and nothing there would exist if it wasn't for massive amounts of adaptation from the human ingenuity to make that a possibility. And that's exactly what will happen here. As the climate starts changing over the course of a century, you will see humans adapt to certain things. There'll be innovations in tech that comes forward that changes and adjusts and deals with those rising temperatures and the changes that occur there. You'll see changes in migration patterns. You'll see where people move because it gets warmer. So for instance, maybe the southern or northern Texas and Oklahoma starts becoming a little bit less hospitable because it gets so warm. People will start moving north. You'll start seeing South Dakota and North Dakota really being great places to be at. And that is why this whole thing seems to be sort of falling on deaf ears, because Joe Biden doesn't have the clout to be able to push these things through that people don't want to do when you start putting the rubber on the road. That they can't tell people not to take advantage of the things that they have available to them to make their countries great today, because somewhere 80 years from now, there might be some issues. Because there's issues for them now, not 80 years from now. They need to deal with that stuff now, not the 80 years from now. And Joe Biden doesn't have the clout, doesn't have the capability, doesn't have really anything to be able to pull this off. So we're looking at error upon error. And this climate issue that is coming through the Senate right now as part of the Build Back Better bill, that's looking like a failure also. And if he can't get that, then he rolls into the climate summit, not be able to get anything there either. It's just failure upon failure upon failure, which was his modus operandi for a long time. Everybody talked about how Joe Biden has just been consistently a failure in just about everything he's done, from foreign policy to legislatively. His one big claim to fame is the assault weapons ban, which did nothing. Over that 10 years, they've talked about this. It really didn't change anything. It was not an important piece of legislation. Whether it went away or started, didn't change anything at all. So that's your big one. Not much to hang your hat on. And apparently, that is Joe Biden's consistent way to go. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, leave those down below in the comments. If you'd like to get this little bit of news and analysis every day, subscribe. Hit that bell so you get notifications Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will be with you on the weekends if anything big happens. But other than that, I'll see you tomorrow.